Hey everybody, welcome back once again to another episode of Spliced in Later. A day later than I originally planned, I apologize for that. The thing that I'm talking about today, I miscalculated when it would be available on Netflix. I thought it would be yesterday, turns out it's today. But if you're listening to this in the future, the day doesn't matter at all. So why bother even mentioning that? I don't know. Let's move on. I don't think this will be a long one today because I don't have that much to say, sadly. But I said I'd talk about it, and I just watched the last episode of The Mandalorian, and I thought that was sucky too. So apologies if I'm a little flat. It's just been an uneventful night of watching television. Anyway, as promised last week, I want to talk to you all today about the 30th anniversary special that has just released on Netflix as of a couple of hours ago for Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It's called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always, starring original actors Walter Emmanuel Jones and David Yost as Zack the Black Ranger and Billy the Blue Ranger, with some side appearances from other characters from the Power Rangers world, and focus on a new actor. I forget their name, but they play Min, who is Trini the Yellow Ranger's daughter in here. The plot, very quickly, is longtime antagonist of the Power Rangers, Rita Repulsa. She's back in a robotic body, and through a very unfortunate and quite dark tone for a show like Power Rangers, straight up murders Trini the Yellow Ranger, leaving her child an orphan. What basically happens for the 55-minute special is there's a lot of antagonism between her and Billy, because she believes Billy got her mother killed. Zack sort of steps in as her new dad, but they got to fight off Rita because she's got a plan to capture all the Rangers all over the world and drain them of their powers, so she can open a time portal, travel back 30 years, and team up with her younger self to kill the Rangers in their sleep. Fucking knife them while they sleep. The tone's all over the place on this one. I can't wait to talk about it. But the reason why I was so excited to watch this and why I planned to talk about it, even if I had no idea if it was going to be good or not, is that I loved the Power Rangers. I still love the Power Rangers, specifically my time with the Power Rangers. I don't watch it now. I sort of keep up to date with whatever new series is on, what color Rangers there are, what steps forward in progression representation they're doing, but I have grown to a point where I probably cannot watch that stuff. It's not really for me. But the stuff I grew up with, the stuff in the 90s, that was my jam. I believe for my 100th episode, maybe it was my I don't know exactly where, but I have done an episode on the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, because that was one of my favorite movies as a kid. It still is now. A special place here in Australia because it was filmed in Sydney, and they pretend Sydney is a fictional place in America called Angel Grove. So they step on the Sydney monorail. They use the Centre Point Tower as a friggin' sword. They shoot in the Australian outback and pretend it's another planet. It's great stuff. But yeah, it's the 30th anniversary. I am just over 30 now. So it started in 1993, meaning I was not even one when the show came out. So basically, as long as Power Rangers has been on, I have been alive. And when I was a kid and I was growing up, it was my favorite show of all time to watch. I would watch Power Rangers relentlessly. I had my favorite characters. Zack was always my favorite. And then you brought in the evil Green Ranger, Tommy, and he by default just became the coolest thing ever. And the thing about Power Rangers was its ability to stay new and fresh and relevant and survive in years by basically what the concept of the show is, if you don't know, is Power Rangers itself is based off a Japanese show called Super Sentai, and I mean based in the very, very least based sense of the word, because all they really do is they take the action footage from the Super Sentai show with people in colorful suits fighting monsters, explosions, in big robots, all of that stuff. They bring that over and they basically put that into a new concept where you have American characters fighting American bad guys and all of that stuff. But when they morph to become Power Rangers, they use the Super Sentai footage to splice it together, essentially, which means the action looked great because Japanese action is always fantastic. Super Sentai had been on ages and ages and ages before Power Rangers started. So after the original run, where they exhausted all the footage they could from that particular Super Sentai series, the powers behind Power Rangers made the brilliant decision to originally change up the superpowers. So the Rangers got new suits, new Zords, all of that. And then after a certain point, where the story reached a natural conclusion for the current roster of Rangers and characters after 6 years, they started a new concept where every season, every year, brand new Power Rangers, brand new costumes, brand new bad guys, brand new allies, brand new themes. We had people going into space, fighting demons in a James Bond style aquabase, time travel, animal spirits, ninjas, dinosaurs, space police in the future, wizards, Indiana Jones for some reason, apocalyptic post worlds, crazy stuff that has lasted for a very, very long time. And I loved it so much. It was very cool. I had a lot of friends who liked it too, so there was a lot of bonding for that. My stepbrother specifically, we would often put on the Power Rangers and we would pretend to be them. So we'd say like, all right, I'm the Black Ranger, you're the Red Ranger, and we try and match the moves because we are big old nerds, and that's just how I like it. I watched Power Rangers religiously. That was back in the age when videos were coming out, so there were new videos. I would buy them, I would rewatch them. I remember one time, this is how confusing videos were back in the day. I bought a video from a season of Power Rangers. I watched the 2 episodes which the video said was on there, and then I would turn the video off and move on. And I had that video for 4 years before I realized that if I kept it playing after the credits, there was a whole other episode on there I had absolutely no idea about. One of the most shocking things that's ever happened to me. I only stopped watching Power Rangers because my parents told me to. They were like, you are entering high school, you shouldn't be watching that stuff anymore. Grow up and move on. So I did. Then, of course, you get to an age where you realize, I can think for myself. And I went back and started rewatching it all again. But the thing that works so well for Power Rangers is the cheesiness of it, combined with the time that it was set. So the 90s and the 2000s, I think. The 90s specifically had a very certain vibe, which if you grew up in the time, you can appreciate it. Now people look back on it and go, what was that? It's kind of like how the 80s is iconic for their hair and the music. The 70s is iconic, I suppose. The 60s, you got James Bond and all of that stuff. But from the 90s, and I guess onwards from that, people don't really look back on the 90s and go, hell yeah. They look back and go, wow. I look back on and go, wow, in a good way. Others, not so much. But in that essence, that's why I can rewatch the stuff that I grew up with, because I remember watching it. I can appreciate the time it was made at. The current Power Rangers stuff, so I haven't really watched anything from like season 16 onwards. I think I don't really, maybe 18. I can't remember. Samurai specifically. I watched an episode of that and it was so bad. Like the dialogue, the acting, the cheese. And I was like, nope, not for me. Done with Power Rangers. But when I would speak to my friends about it and tell them I can't watch the new Power Rangers because of this, and this, they would counter with, it's always been this, and this. What you're not having trouble with is what has always been there. So it is a perspective. It is a question of what was your time with the Power Rangers? When were you growing up? And what you can give a pass for and what doesn't work for you anymore, even though absolutely nothing has changed. So that said, when they announced that a 30th anniversary special for Power Rangers was coming out, that would not be like one of those anniversary specials where it's whatever current season of Power Rangers is on, and they throw in some classic Rangers from the past, but it's still essentially their sort of episode. This special is specifically for the characters, the roster, the crew that were in the original show back in the original 3-season run, 1993 to 1996, of that original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. None of the new stuff, all old characters, old Zords, old cheese, all of that there, including actors who have not engaged in Power Rangers for quite some time. So that was really exciting to hear it would come out as its own thing, to be on Netflix. There was a lot of wondering about who's going to be in it, how's it going to go. But what I should have remembered as well is that you got to take that stuff with a grain of salt, because as great as Power Rangers is, it is notoriously plagued with production issues, hostile work environments, all sorts of dark horses that are behind the scenes stuff, which you don't know about at the time when you're watching it. But now people speak out, you learn things. It doesn't taint the show for me, but it shines a light into what these actors went through working on this thing back in a time before fair workmanship for actors and all of that shit as well. I won't go into it all now. There's crazy stuff, but to name some specifically, you've got homophobia to such an extent that it drove original Blue Ranger actor David Yost to psychiatric treatment, trying to science the homosexuality out of him, which is absolutely disgusting. I'm glad that he has been able to embrace who he is and also move forward. Fuck that. Once Power Rangers becomes really, really big, apparently they decided, no, we're not going to pay the actors a fair amount to appreciate the success. It's really, the success is half on their personalities as well, to such an extent that 3 of the original Ranger actors unceremoniously left during the 2nd season, where walked off set, never came back. Looking back at it now, you can see archive footage, odd dubbings, very, very disgraceful way of just going, bye, here's some new people, moving on. Incredible work hours that just would not let up. Notoriously, filming here in Australia was done for cheapness as well. A lot of stuff. So knowing that in this as well, what you want from a 30th anniversary special and what you're going to get are 2 very different things. And you have to remember that, as I didn't, unfortunately, going into this, that it's still the same production company. It's swapped hands between Disney and Hasbro and whatever, but it's still Saban now, I think. I'm not sure. But it's that same sort of attitude. It's not really putting in the effort, the money, the detail that fans are probably wanting, meaning what you get is still relevant and probably about as good as anything you've got before. But for a 30th anniversary special, it's not really like, hell yeah. The 10th anniversary special they did back in 2003, where they just had all the Red Rangers come together for a special episode, that was way better than this. And that was like a 18-minute episode of Wild Force. So there you go. But there's some good intentions behind it as well. The main thing about this is to honor Tui Trang. She played Trini, the original Yellow Ranger, and she unfortunately died very, very young in a car accident back in 2001, I think it was. Very bad. Life ended way too soon. So a lot of what the intention is here is sort of to honor her legacy. I don't know how that you do that by killing, whatever. I'm not going to question it. The intention is good, especially our main actors in here are Walter Emmanuel Jones and David Yost playing Zack and Billy. They're our original cast. They're the only original cast members that are back. Don't expect any surprise appearances from anybody else. But you can tell through their delivery, they're not the best actors in the world, but they're wonderful. I love them. That they're bringing a lot of their real world grief into this story of honoring her and letting her daughter step up to become the new Yellow Ranger, all this stuff. You can see where the story is coming a mile away. So that's really sweet. It's nice. And there's another layer to it in that, unfortunately, Jason David Frank, the one and only Jason David Frank, who played Tommy, the Green Ranger, Evil Green Ranger, White Ranger, Red Ranger, Black Ranger, basically the God, the Jesus, the true Messiah of Power Rangers, the legend, unfortunately took his own life back in November, very surprisingly and upsettingly. So this is dedicated to both of them, but this was made before he passed, so it's not designed to be a tribute for him. But there's some things in here like seeing old footage of him, it hits you a bit. So sad, but it's nice that they made that decision to put that there for him as well. Look, I don't know what I was expecting. I think I would have liked it to be better than what it was, but at the end of the day, it's a love letter to the people who watched Power Rangers back in the 90s. So it's full references and callbacks and old school Ranger moves and morphing and Zords. Our bad guy Rita, she's in a robot body because obviously Barbara Goodson is too old to pretend like she's still an immortal witch demon from space. But being a robot means she can provide the voice. And she puts a lot of gleeful menace into it that I liked. It sounds a bit old. Everybody's quite old in this. None more so than the voice of the robot Alpha 9, who sounds like Alpha 9 needs to go to a retirement home because he's, oh my god, he's old. But goddamn, he's giving it his all, and I appreciate him for it. It's a fun 55 minutes. It reminds you why you liked Power Rangers, but it doesn't give you that sense of this was a 30th special, and I feel like they've really honored that legacy. But at the same time, it's a nice little story about grief and family and acceptance and honoring Twee Trang and, to an extent, Jason David Frank as well. So if that was the only reason they made this thing with that intention, they pulled that off. In terms, I can't really rate this because unless you like Power Rangers, unless you have that love and nostalgia and respect for it especially from the 90s, you're not going to watch it. And if you do watch it and you are one of those things, it depends how your brain has evolved. If you can accept that cheese, that cheapness, that corniness, filmed in modern time, would it still work for you? Can you give it a pass if you can't give it to the new stuff? For me, I'm torn on that. I had fun with it, but I also was like, it's not the 90s anymore. So I don't know. I think I can't rate it. I can't give it anything for that. People who are listening to this and who have managed to make it this far either are avid listeners of mine and are just doing this because they have to listen to the episode, and I thank you for that. But for the people listening who really, really liked Power Rangers, love those Mighty Morphin days, and are curious before they watch it, if it's worth it, absolutely. It's worth the 55 minutes. It's just not going to blow you away, make you emotional, really remind you or give you those feelings that you felt back in the day. If you want that, I would recommend you go back and watch the old stuff again or watch the movie rather than look for it in here. This might work if you were watching all the old stuff in like a marathon and at the end you popped this on like to cap it off. But at the end of the day, I also really appreciated seeing these old actors back, especially Zack and Billy, who have not been on the show since their separate reasons for why they left the show. Zack was one of the group that left because of the Bay. So the last time we saw him was on a blurry viewing globe screen, where he wasn't even there. And Billy as well, the same way. When he left after all the homophobia shit that went on, he also disappeared from the show and then was awkwardly CGI'd going, "Bye guys, I'm off to another planet." And neither of them have been on the show since then. So they're back and they're front and center. That's great. There's some supporting players in here who have been back before. Not the originals, but you get the second Pink Ranger Cat, who's quite nice, and the second Red Ranger Rocky, who I gotta say, I've never been a Rocky fan, but Steve Cardenas in this, he's fun. He's got a charm to it, which I think only works now because he's just having a laugh with it, and I appreciated that, which was nice. Yeah. So there you are. That's the Power Rangers 30th anniversary. I wonder if they'll do a 40th, and if I'll still be doing this in 40 years, if I'll talk about it then. I don't think so. I'll be back next week. I'm going to talk about Star Trek Picard. Interestingly, I haven't talked about Star Trek yet on this show, and I certainly haven't wanted to with some of the stuff coming out, but the roller coaster of emotions that I've been feeling, considering how bad Star Trek Picard was in those first 2 seasons, and how suddenly it's the greatest show ever for season 3, is baffling, and I feel like I need to unpack that. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. I may also be talking about a movie. I don't know if it'll be available though. I didn't even know it existed. I was watching the Hot Ones where they eat the chicken wings with the spice, and Jake Gyllenhaal was on it. And he's like, "Come watch my new Guy Ritchie movie." And it's like, "There's a new Guy Ritchie movie? I just watched the last one." So I don't know where that's coming out, if that's in theaters, if that's on streaming, but apparently it's out on April 21st. So I'll keep an eye out for that. And who knows, I could also be talking about Peter Pan and Wendy next week. So there might actually be a few episodes next week, or there might just be one. Honestly, couldn't say for certain, but I hope you'll keep an eye out for that. I hope you've enjoyed what I've given you so far, and I hope I can keep providing you more good, silly content for the future. Movies start dropping again in May for sure, though, so we'll be getting some more reviews in there. Until then, until next week, I love and appreciate you. As always, thank you for listening. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.